Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I was getting ready to film my review for Creepshow for my big Halloween review, and the power went out, and I hear strange noises coming from upstairs, so I went up to check it out. It's been a weird month, which is awesome because it's Halloween, but first we had the Blob, then the Headless Horseman showed up. Now I don't know what's going on. I heard some disco music. We're gonna go up and check it out. Let's go. All right, here I am up in the attic, and I found a source of music. It's one of my other cell phones up here playing disco music, which I don't own any disco music, so I don't know how the hell it got that. Hold on, let me turn this off. Oh God, what the heck is that? Hold on. Oh God, folks, look at that. What kind of sick joke is this? I mean, I know it's Halloween and all, but what the hell is going on? Oh! I want my cake. Hey, welcome back to my channel. Happy Halloween. We are at the end of October. It's the best time of the year, at least for some of us that love this month. And for my big Halloween review, which will be out Friday, not on Saturday, but I'm going to release it Friday, is Creepshow. This movie came out in November 12th of 1982. And actually, Warner Brothers gave this film a weird release. When it was first released, they actually released it in Boston in July for a few weeks, where it did really, really well. And they wanted to release it as close to Halloween as possible, but there was a little film called Halloween 3 coming out at the same time. And considering the success of Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, Warner Brothers did not want to compete with Halloween 3. Even though we all know Halloween 3 bombed, they did not know that, so they moved it to November, which I think if it would have been released in October, it would have been much better. But they released it after Halloween. And this budget had an $8 million budget. This film had an $8 million budget, and upon release, it made $21 million. This is actually George Romero's only film to ever debut at #1 at the box office. George Romero directed this film, and this script was written by Stephen King. George Romero and Stephen King have been friends for years, and they were looking for a project to do together. And they came up with this because their love of EC Comics and Vault of Horror comics. As a matter of fact, the comic book that's in this film was illustrated by one of the guys who used to do the illustrations for EC Comics, which that was pretty cool. They brought him in. Now, at the beginning of this film, this is an anthology film. There's 5 stories, and I'm going to break them down per story, and I'm going to give you my overall rating of this film. At the beginning of the film, or the wraparound story, the story that gets us kicked off is about this little boy who was actually played by Stephen King's son, Joe Hill, who is now an author in his own right. He plays the kid in this movie at the beginning of the film, and a wraparound story at the end. And we get the great Tom Atkins as the prick father who gives his kid a hard time, slaps him across the face, and throws out his comic book. And the kid's upstairs after his father goes down. It's Halloween time. There's a jack-o'-lantern in the window, and he's like, under his breath, he's like, "I'm gonna get you. You're gonna get yours, and I'm gonna take revenge," and all this stuff. So the comic book's out in the trash, and the next morning we got our cameo by Tom Savini, and because he plays one of the trashmen, and they start talking about, "Oh, we used to read this when we were kids," and it has all kinds of cool stuff, and the voodoo doll's missing, which comes into play later. And we get on to our first story, which is called Father's Day, and we get to see an early role by Ed Harris, and he gets to show off some of his dance moves during the disco scene. And basically it's about this rich family, and their Aunt Bedelia is coming because it's Father's Day, and they get together every Father's Day because she visits the grave of her father, Nathan, who was this wealthy businessman at the end of life. She was taking care of him. He had a stroke and he was bound in a wheelchair. So she was taking care of him, and it flashes back and shows him, and he was not a very sympathetic figure. He was calling her a bitch, and "You're only after my money," which may have been true because some of these family members aren't the most savory of people. And she shows up and goes right out to the grave where his tombstone is, and she's drinking Jim Beam, and she's like yelling at him about how he actually had her husband killed, the love of his life. And they say, we get to learn how she was unstable to begin with, and taking care of her father really pushed her over the edge. So she's there, and Ed Harris and his wife, he married into the family, and they're gonna have this dinner after Aunt Bedelia comes in, and Aunt Bedelia drops her bottle of Jim Beam, and all of a sudden the father rises up from the dirt and kills her, and then he wants his Father's Day cake, because in the flashback we see, "I want my Father's Day cake." And so when he gets reanimated, like this gal behind me, he wants his Father's Day cake, and he keeps saying, "I want my cake," like my intro. And then pretty much he kills Ed Harris, and then he kills the maid, and then the older woman who's in charge of this family, And at the end, he walks out with his cake of her head. He rips her head off, puts icing on it and candles. He goes, "I got my cake. Happy Father's Day." And it's a really good. It's funny. It's well acted. It's well shot. And I love how George Romero frames the movie. And when something sinister happens, you get these bright red and green lights. And he's trying to make it look like a comic book panel. He does a fantastic job with that as the movie goes along. Now, our second story is The Lonesome Death of Jordy V, which is Jordy V is played by Stephen King. And he's this farmer in Maine, real redneck, kind of backwoods kind of guy, not very smart, and this meteor crashes on his land. And he goes to getting his dreams about getting money for it from the college, and he touches it and he throws water on it to cool it down so he can put it in a bucket, and it burns his hand. So he cools it down, puts it in the bucket, and it cracks open and he empties it out. And this green moss starts growing. And it starts growing on his fingers, on his face. And then, I'm going to fast forward through this, but through the end, by the end, he does all the wrong things, and by the end, he's covered in it, and he ends up shooting himself with a double-barrel shotgun to kill himself. But yes, Stephen King's in this movie, and he was told to act like Wild E. Coyote in this segment. And it is actually fun. Stephen King's over-the-top redneck here, and his flashbacks thinking about his father and going to the college. It's kind of cool. I like that, and I think Stephen King's really good in this role. Even though he's a writer, he's not an actor. I think he does really well here. And then we go on to the next one, which is called Something to Tide You Over. And our main bad guy in this one is Leslie Nielsen, who most people remember for the Naked Gun films as a comedian. But Leslie Nielsen for years was a serious actor. But in this film, and they said on set, well, Leslie Nielsen was, when it was his time to perform, he did his role and he was serious about it, but he carried a fart machine in his pocket. And right during rehearsals, he'd set it off. Right before George Romero would yell action, he would set it off, and Ted Danson would end up cracking up. Ted Danson's also in this part of it, and he plays like this football player, and he's having an affair with Leslie Nielsen's character's wife, who's played by Galen Ross, who's from Dawn of the Dead. She was the main female lead in Dawn of the Dead, and she's back here. We only see her on a video screen and then as a reanimated corpse. And basically, Leslie Nielsen's character takes revenge, his name's Richard, on them two because he feels betrayed and he doesn't like giving anything away that's his. So he buries both of them in the beach. He at gunpoint makes them dig their own watery grave, and the tide's coming and he tells them, well, you can make it if you hold your breath and keep it together. And obviously they both don't. He goes back to his house, his beach house, and he thinks everything's fine. But this is Creepshow, and they come back from the dead and they take their revenge at the end of the film. At the end of this little short, Leslie Nielsen's buried in the sand and the water's starting to come in, and he's like screaming, he's laughing manically, screaming, I can hold my breath for a long time. And it's a great sequence, and watching Leslie Nielsen in this part is fantastic. He's great in this little role. And so is Ted, and all the actors here are great. The next one is my personal favorite. I love them all, but my personal favorite out of the 5 shorts is The Crate. And this one stars Hal Holbrook as his Professor Henry at this college. And you got Adria Barbeau in this film as his wife. She plays Wilma, or she likes to be called Billy. And she's obnoxious and just, I'll get into that in a second. And we have Fritz Weaver plays Dexter, who's Henry's best friend. They play chess all the time. At the beginning of the film, they're at this gathering for the college. And right away we see Hal Holbrook's character is put upon husband, like he's verbally abused by Wilma. She's obnoxious and not very pleasant to be around. And she calls him names and makes fun of him. And what I love about this is their interactions between Hal Holbrook and Adria Barbeau. He fantasizes even during this mixer about killing his wife. Like he pulls out a gun and shoots her in the head, and everybody starts clapping like he's fantasizing, and they're like, good shot, it's a bullseye, and everybody's it's just hilarious the way it's pulled off. And even later he fantasizes about choking her out with his tie and all this shit. Well, he gets his chance to get rid of his wife because the maintenance man at the college finds his crate under the stairs. Just by dumb accidents, he dropped a quarter and rolled under there. So he pulls the thing, there's like this lattice or this barrier up so he couldn't get in. So he pulls it off, he gets in there and he finds his crate, and it's marked from the 1800s. Antarctic Expedition and a Juliet Carpenter. Romero's little nod to John Carpenter's The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing came out the same year as this did. And he calls Fritz, because he's the head of the college, and he goes to see what's going on with this crate. And they open the crate and the maintenance man's hand gets eaten off, and we see there's a creature inside. It's been living in there all these years, and he eats the maintenance man. So he goes and gets this other guy, Charlie Garrison, who's working in this lab. It's in the summertime. He's a college kid, and he ends up getting killed by the beast as well. So he runs to Henry and tells him what happened. Now Henry is an opportunistic guy here. He realizes he has a chance to get rid of his wife with no evidence, and he convinces he drugs Fritz. He passes out, and he convinces Wilma to meet him at the college if there's a problem, which she does, and the monster ends up eating her, and he ends up securing the crate and dumping it in an old stripping pit that's filled with water. And at the end, he's like, there's no evidence. Nobody knows what happened. These people just disappeared. And at the end, the creature gets out. And actually, this was Tom Savini did all the makeup effects for this film. That puppet, that monster in the crate, which they affectionately called Fluffy on set, was Tom Savini's first animatronic. And he actually, since he never did one before, he actually called Rob Bottin, who just came off of doing the effects for the Thing, to ask him how would you go about building this animatronic. So he actually got some, I thought that was pretty cool that you would call Rob Bottin for some advice. And the special effects in this movie are really, really well done. And then the last final episode is called They're Creeping Up on You, starring the great E.G. Marshall. This film has a great cast of character actors in this film. And E.G. Marshall plays this rich guy, this prick called Upton Pratt, and he owns this apartment building. He lives in the penthouse. And it's very sterile. This guy's a germaphobe, and he hates bugs. He has bug spray everywhere, and he's paranoid about roaches getting in his apartment. And he's given, like, these people who work for him all this shit on the phone, and he's just a very rude, prick, rich guy who looks down on everybody else but himself. And basically at the end, his paranoia comes true because there's roaches everywhere, and then we get that awesome shot at the end where he passes out in like a safe room, and all the roaches went inside of him, and they bust out of his body. It's a really cool scene. And we cap off our wraparound story with Tom Atkins downstairs in the morning saying how his back hurts, and there's his son upstairs with a voodoo doll putting a pin in it, and that's the end of Creepshow. And they went on to make a sequel. It's not as good as the first one. The first one's definitely a really fun Halloween film. I watch this every Halloween. I love this film. In this film, in the crate scene at the mixer, actually George Romero's wife makes an appearance. There's a young couple that just get there and they're introduced to everybody. She plays the wife, so she's in this film too. And actually, she's the one that said, "Good shot," when he fantasizing about shooting his wife. The marble ashtray in the Father's Day segment that she uses to kill her father in the wheelchair is actually in every segment of this film. It's in the wraparound story. It's in every segment. You can find it. All you gotta do is look for it. I don't want to give it away. It's a fun little thing to look for when you rewatch this film. But the marble ashtray is in every segment of this film. You can find it at some point or another. It's there. What else? Oh, at the beginning of the film, when the father comes back to life, the Nathan corpse, because his name was Nathan in the story, that was actually played by John Amplas underneath all that makeup. John Amplas played Martin in George Romero's Martin, which is a really cool twist on a vampire movie if you've ever seen it. And he also is one of the scientists in Day of the Dead. So that's a little cool little trivia for you. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else. Oh, this was the only, I think I said this earlier, but this is the only film Romero ever released that opened up at #1, which I think is pretty crazy because Romero's had so many great films. But he was like an underground filmmaker, an independent filmmaker at heart. And this was all filmed in Pittsburgh except for the beach house in the Leslie Nielsen segment. That was filmed in New Jersey. But other than that, it was all filmed around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A matter of fact, some was shot around Carnegie Mellon University. But yeah, I would give this film a 9.5 out of 10. I love it that much. It's probably my favorite anthology film, right? And Trick or Treat's right up there with it. I would actually give Trick or Treat's right around the same ballpark. I love Trick or Treat. Those are my two favorite anthology films. But yeah, if you've never seen Creepshow, check it out. Just give it 9.5 out of 10. Have you ever seen Creepshow? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this video. I greatly appreciate it. I want to wish you all a very happy Halloween. Enjoy. Halloween's on a Saturday. Best time to have it. I hope you have a great kick-ass weekend, and I'll be back soon with another review. Thanks. Bye.